If there's one genre of video games I've been getting into a lot in recent times, it would definitely be the fighting game genre. Games like Soul Calibur and Marvel v Capcom are good examples of such, but in particular, I've been getting into Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. As it's a fighting game based on some of the greatest RPGs I've ever played, I'd be a fool not to enjoy its great selection of characters from Persona 3 and 4, as well as its new characters. Although it's a fighting game, it has been mixed with the prime RPG gameplay mechanics that make the Persona games so great, although they have been converted into fighting game mechanics. Much like Blaze Blue and Guilty Gear, Persona 4 Arena Ultimax has characters which aren't copy-pastes of each other. All these characters were great fun to play as in both character and fighting style. With all their own personal method of fighting and charm, I will like all these characters, but the million-dollar question is, who are my absolute favourites? I will be judging these characters based on how they're played, their persona, and yeah, why not, I'm going to rank them by their instant kills as well. And yes, DLC characters will also be included. Just to point out, all characters will be ranked from their regular form as well as their shadow form, because they are for the most part very similar, and because nobody really plays with the shadow forms anyway. Oh, and all the footage from this video is courtesy of yours truly. Please bear in mind that I like playing as every character in this game, and I will be judging them based on their tiers or their role in the Persona timeline. Only my own opinion. I mean, what are the chances that my favourite characters are your favourite characters? Anyway, get your weapons, get your Persona ready, and get ready to enjoy the video. Take it away.
These fists will teach you what a real brawl is like!
I feel like I've spoken about this guy before. Kanji Tatsumi was one of the funniest characters in Persona 4, duly for acting like the big, gruff, tough guy, but was actually a big softie. And as a character in this game, Kanji is still no exception. As a fighter in both the RPG and the fighting games, Kanji kinda reminds me of T-Hawk from Street Fighter or Chief Thunder from Killer Instinct. He is an incredibly slow and sluggish fighter, but when he gets up close to his opponents, he is one hell of a fighter. He is also one of 4 fighters in the game who fights using electricity, the others being Hugh, Mari, and another fighter we'll get to later, but no spoilers. But if you see my top 10 electrokinetics list, you'll know that I believe that Kanji is the superior electric master of the 4. But the most creative thing about Kanji is his weapon choice. You see, most fighters in Persona use some sort of martial arts weapon, or at least a weapon used in a lot of fantasy, like Labrys's axe or Elizabeth's cards. So what does Kanji use? A fucking folding chair.
Go to hell! Shut it! Sit, you little...
What, is Kanji a wrestler now?
And his name is John Cena!
Well, no matter what he is, Kanji isn't limited to fighting with a folding chair. Like I said, Kanji and his persona called Takami Kazuchi, a deity who was born from the blood of Kagetsuchi, who was slain from the blade of Izanagi, who is, coincidentally, Yu's persona, and he descended from the high plane of heaven in order to pacify the deities of Izano. His persona is mainly used to shoot electricity from a short distance, but at a fast speed, and at a powerful level. I used Takami Kazuchi a lot during the early stages of my first playthrough of Persona 3, and it's kind of a shame that I can't use it in Persona 4, especially as it went from this to this. And his instant kill, which has him instant killing his opponent by bro-fisting with his persona with enough force and electricity to finish him off in one shot. Undoubtedly one of my favourite instant kills in the game. And hey, even if that doesn't work, Kanji can actually defeat his opponents by shouting. I'm not making it up. Shouting.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
I'd like to test your power.
For number 9, I was kind of stuck between choosing either Elizabeth or Margaret. While Elizabeth can use the card power, and in quite an impressive way no less, and has the power to summon Megidolars, I had to go with Margaret. As a current employee of the Velvet Room and the older sister of Elizabeth and Theodore, Margaret is the current assistant to Igor, and is usually spent giving advice to the protagonist. Now I know what you're thinking, Margaret is similar to Elizabeth in fighting style due to the weapon choices, so why would I choose Margaret? Well, I just generally like Margaret's character a bit more. While her and her sister are very calm, collected, and very caring, Elizabeth just sounds kind of boring and doesn't really speak all that much. And while she does do some funny stuff every now and then, a lot of the time she's just talking about business. Elizabeth is a more social character in my opinion, and I think she is a more in-depth character, although she isn't all that entertaining. Her main weapon style is fighting with tarot cards, just like Elizabeth, and using them for offensive and defensive tactics, almost like a mixture of Luxord and Zexion from the Kingdom Hearts series. Having such a small but lethal weapon makes her one of the most evasive fighters in the game, although her most unique trump card is her power to have multiple personas rather than just one, like most other persona users in the series, who have just one persona. Ranging from a Lancer persona, a Thorn Whip using persona, and even an incarnation of Lucifer himself. Margaret may have some rather mediocre defenses, but her speed and strength will usually do more than make up for it, and her instant kill is pretty cool, even if it's tame for persona standards. She fires a gigantic Hamon blast at her opponents. For those of you who don't know, Hamon is basically the power of light, and light is an instant kill in the regular Persona games. So yeah, needless to say, she's got victory in the bag when she uses her instant kill. If you were to choose a DLC character for this game, Margaret would be my second choice.
I hope you're prepared for me.
Disney, you need to kick Elsa off the throne, because there was always a superior Ice Queen to her, ever since 2006. And her name is Lady Mitsuru Kirijo. Probably the most intelligent and successful character throughout the two games, Mitsuru is the leader of the Kirijo group, and the successor of her late father, Takehara. Due to being all rich and stuff, you'd expect her to be a snobby bitch. Thank Vision, she isn't. She is a bit hard to get friends with, but when you manage that, she's very reliable, and surprisingly has a sense of humour despite being the character in the group who is the calculated genius. That's mainly the reason why I like her character, although she is very fun to play as in the battlefield as well. Keeping to her tradition in Persona 3, Mitsuru's main weapon is a very well balanced one-handed blade, although I personally agree with Junpei and prefer using two-handed swords, but it's still a decent weapon. Like I said, this weapon is extremely well balanced, and it makes Mitsuru probably the best fighter to use if you want to make your opponent feel like a dunce, as it is an excellent method to breach your opponent's defenses and inflict mass quantities of pain on them if you land a decent hit while staying from a distance, just jabbing away at them. Then there's her persona, Artemisia. As one of the very few personas in the series that is actually based off a real person, Artemisia participated in the Battle of Salamis, where she apparently survived being captured by sinking her own ship, and therefore formed an escape route. The Persians were astonished with this battle tactic and praised her to be a valiant ally. Though I doubt she was able to cast magic spells as she pleased, Mitsuru is the only fighter in the game who is an expert of Ice Manipulator because of her persona. While Chie can use them occasionally, she mainly focuses on her close combat abilities with her kicks, so Mitsuru still takes a crown from that. And this persona does everything an Ice persona should do: hit fast, cause a crap ton of pain, and be able to trap the opponents in a field of ice to go ballistic on them. God, why is it all the Ice users have swords and are really smart and successful? My only problem with Mitsuru is that her instant kill really could have been a lot better, but that's the only drawback.
Sorry, but I don't play nice.
I'll be straight up and honest here, I really don't like Adachi. His actions in Persona 4 and the Arena games are just shameful, and he just seems to be the stereotypical corrupt detective character. But as a fighter, he is a beast. Okay, Toru Adachi is one hell of a good playable character in the game, and takes my vote for the best DLC character in the game. I've already stated the downside, so let's just get that out of the way first. Adachi is a love or hate fighter. He is known for his sneakiness and cocky attitude, and this goes so much into his playstyle. He's very hard to predict, so it can be annoying when facing him, but thankfully not as much as Teddy is. And is the only single fighter in the game who uses darkness as his main method of attack aside from his gun. Yeah, Koromaru uses that as well, but he's fighting alongside Ken this time round. And he can use his dark power in a really dreadful way for an instant kill, as you have no idea what the opponent is going through when he dies. Though it does kind of drag on a bit. As for the good things about him, well, let's start with his fighting style. Adachi is a very lanky fighter, meaning he's very fast and can hit from a long distance, whether it's physically or specially, all while using his persona, an evolved version of Yu's Izanagi persona called Magatsu Izanagi, making Adachi one of very few fighters who can inflict any stats condition onto his opponents, as well as fire a miniature Megidola, while also having the power to poison his opponents along with the occasional slash attacks. With this power you expect him to be a user of the Hermit Arcana, but he's actually a user of the Jester Arcana, even though Magatsu Izanagi is a persona of the Fool Arcana. This is most likely done to fit his madman style personality and comic relief style humour. And people? This is what happens when you let people like him take control of the streets where you live. Mostly innocent people will die, and you will get forced into deadly game shows.
And do you accept the resignation of all of these liars? Of all the corrupt?
Don't underestimate me just because I'm in middle school.
If you trained all of your party equally throughout Persona 3, then I think it's safe to say that Ken and Koromaru were probably the toughest fighters in the game. Ken for his spear, his talents as an electric user, and as a medic, as well as having the power to use light-powered insta-heal hammer techniques. Koromaru too, for being a specialist in close-quarter combat, control over fire, and for dark-powered instant-kill Mudo powers. So clearly putting these two characters together won't make them broken, right? Well, no actually. Ken and Koromaru are actually one of the mid-leveled fighters in the game when it comes to strength. But that doesn't stop them being one hell of a tag team. Much like Pharah and Tor from Mortal Kombat X, the two usually play with the big guy in this situation, Ken, doing most of the fighting with his spear, and Koromaru doing small bits to cause vital damage. Because of his spear, Ken has quite possibly the best range out of all the physical fighters in the game. Yeah, even better than Mitsuru. But unlike Mitsuru, Ken can be very effective as a fighter in airborne combat, whether his opponents are on the ground or in the sky. And when he's got Koromaru, he only gets more pumped up. Mr. Amada and his loyal friend can be very good at close-quarter combat as well, since Koromaru is actually a knife user. This grants him fast, short-reaching attacks that can interrupt opponents. But like I said, this sounds like a broken fighter, doesn't it? Do not be alarmed, there are problems with this. Due to being two separate fighters in one, these two must keep an eye on each other's health all the time. Because if Koromaru goes down, not only does Ken lose his advantage at close range, but he is very vulnerable to pressure from out of nowhere onslaughts, and if the opponent even manages to land a half decent hit on Koromaru, they will be able to get a unique cancel option to Ken. So this leaves Ken on his own, and usually wide open because his attacks take a decade to get started. And while his instant kill may not seem like much, Ken and Koromaru surround you with the two most deadly forces in the franchise, light and darkness, and are burying you in it. So unless you're a boss from any of the games, this should kill you in an instant. That is one hell of a learning curve when you start off playing as them, but once you get the hang of them, they will bless you with victories and victories.
Time to show my mettle.
My favourite character from Persona 3 has always been Aigis. She has damn cool weapons, she is the best physical Persona fighter in the game, her weapons of choice are freaking grenade launchers, she has the most character development out of all the team, and she's a humanoid robot. What more could you possibly ask for? But that doesn't quite make her my favourite fighter in this game. Hell, not even my favourite fighter from Persona 3 in this game. But that'll come later. In any case, Aigis is one of 3 characters who are equal in both long range and close range combat. She is a shadow hunting robot which excels in facing pretty much any opponent, and that alone is reason enough for her to be very fun to play as. And as a robot, she has more weapons than Grounder, and ranging from a shotgun, a missile launcher, and even a minigun. So with all these weapons, Aigis comes with a feature that is unique to her, a magazine count. This will keep track of all the bullets you currently have, although it would be nice if you could reload them during battle. These weapons and physical attacks get stronger when she activates All Gear mode, which in short, boosts her attack level for a short time. But once the All Gear gauge is depleted, Aigis will shut down for a short period of time. In order to use the All Gear mode, you need to build up about 50% of your SP gauge, which is easily one of Aigis' greatest traits. Now she can use some of her best moves at a very minor SP cost, as she only requires 25 SP for high damage combos. She's a good fighter mainly for being such a hard hitter, but this does come at a cost. Due to her mostly being brawn, Aigis has significantly less health than everyone else and is rather low defenses. And although she depends on the persona as much as an engineer depends on a sentry, she actually has very limited persona abilities. She is a great fighter while she's alive, you just need to make sure she stays in a good distance from her opponent. As for her persona, who is Athena, which if you know anything about mythology, is the Greek goddess of wisdom, courage, civilization, law, justice and strength, and you get what I'm talking about. Even so, I don't think she was good enough to have an electric rod built into her and have the potential to fire gigantic lasers across the screen, because that's Aigis' instant kill in a nutshell. With all this going for her, there really isn't any wonder as to why she's my favourite character in Persona 3.
So you're my sparring partner.
But as I said, she isn't my favourite character to play as from Persona 3 in this game. Yep, that would be Akihiko Sanada. Known as the two-fisted protein junkie, Akihiko has gone from being the leader of the Gekkokan boxing club to a warrior who travels the planet searching for strong opponents and new techniques. So basically he's become a stereotypical fighting game protagonist like Ryu or Akira, but fortunately Akihiko isn't a protagonist, so he has a bit more personality. I won't say he's a sort of badass character with a heart of gold kind of guy, but he's closer to that than anything else. Due to being a close combatant, Akihiko's main weaponry solely consists of martial arts, so he and Chie are the only fighters who don't use any weapons in the game, aside from their personas. While Chie is all about the kicks, Akihiko is all about the fist. Needless to say, this makes Akihiko the most useful fighter at close range, as he can just run in, produce a good couple punches, and get the hell out of there before you can say Hitmonchan. Yes! This is Akihiko's primary selling point because he hardly ever has to use up SP, because he barely uses his persona, known as Caesar. Aside from the admittingly useful kill rush or assault dive techniques, believe that causes him to lose HP rather than SP. The only time you really need to use his SP is to cause lightning damage for his Matsuo and Thunder Fist attacks, and even then he doesn't use electricity as much as say you or the previously mentioned Kanji. Oh, and of course you can use his insta-kill move if you have enough SP, which just so happens to be my favourite instant kill in the game. Oh, is Akihiko secretly a Super Saiyan now? His high speed, health bar and attack power does however come at a bit of a cost. All this reliance on pure skill rather than projectile attacks makes him very vulnerable to zoning characters who need to fight at a particular distance to stand a chance. I'm looking at you, Teddy! But even if he's facing an opponent with just a little bit of range like Junpei or Labras, Akihiko is still at a bad disadvantage. But when he's close enough, Akihiko shows no mercy. Akihiko, my friend, Shinjiro and Miki would be so proud of you.
I, Yukiko Amagi, will be your opponent.
Ah, another character I have spoken of previously. Yukiko Amagi, or the unconquerable Snow Black if you want to be fancy, is in my opinion the better of the two rich, popular, intelligent, but downright dangerous ladies in the Persona 3 and 4 timeline. As the current upcoming manager of the historical famous Amagi Inn, Yukiko has, well, bigger dreams. Now that she's accepted her true emotions and began her own journey, Yukiko has gained the power of the persona Konohana Sakuya, the daughter of the mountain god Uyamatsumi. Konohana Sakuya was accused of infidelity and was then left to burn in a burning hut, but she stood in the hut, claiming that the fire would not touch her if she had been faithful and emerged unscathed. And her emblem is the cherry blossom. This may not seem all that important, but Yukiko and cherry blossoms go together like heavy and a sandwich. Although cherry blossoms aren't her main talent, that would be her power of fire and a fan user. Konohana Sakuya is a persona who specialises in fire, which allows her to be one of the few fighters who can break fire. And she has quite possibly the best projectiles in the game as well as some of the most, as long as you can reach its max strength that is. This makes Yukiko a very good zoning character and a fantastic ground to ground character. And using her fans as melee weapons, which actually cause quite a bit of pain to her enemies, Yukiko can control the fire and the cherry blossoms of her own accord, leading to the instant kill which has the most hits out of all the instant kills in the game. Although she isn't all that great when in the air, mixed with a below average health bar and overall weak defenses, Yukiko is very vulnerable a lot of the time, especially if she can't use a persona because she depends on it so much. So just keep some SP secure just in case your strategy fucks up at any point. Much like Ken and Koromaru, she is one hell of a learning curve, but the reward you get for mastering her truly pays off. Though I've got to ask, Yukiko's main talent is the fact that she's not a fire user but she's a healer, so why can't she use any of her healing abilities during battle?
This is my job. Here goes.
If you're starting your Persona experience with Arena Ultimax, and if you are, I have some advice. Don't start with Arena Ultimax. But if you don't heed my advice, you'll be introduced to a grand total of 22 new characters. But what you won't know is that only 4, and even then half of those other characters, are just versions of other characters. are brand new to Persona 4 Arena games. The first of which is Lapras, and while she is a decent fighter, I generally prefer Sho Minazuki. This guy is tragic. Much like Strega from Persona 3, Sho was an orphan who used to be one of Ikatsuki's test subjects. Due to having massive potential compared to all the other orphans he had gathered, Ikatsuki viewed Sho as his favourite test subject. So as part of the experiment, Sho was isolated from the rest of the world, preventing him making contact with anybody. So yeah, Sho kind of developed a large amount of insanity during that time. He'd also developed exceptional fighting abilities that surpasses normal humans due to the experiments as well. Now, as I said earlier, Sho is split into two characters. There's Sho and Minazuki. Both Sho and Minazuki have the same fighting style using two sword styles, but Sho doesn't have a persona, but instead uses another soul inside him called Minazuki, which is kind of like a dark side. And while Minazuki has a persona known as Tsukiyomi, the god of Shintoism, who was born from Izanagi's right eye as he bathed after his descent into the underworld, thus making him the brother of Amaterasu and Susanoo. Due to this, the two characters are usually fighting within the one body, so their personality usually changes. Don't feel stupid if you can't understand it, it makes way more sense if you play the game. But the single main reason I really enjoy Minazuki is just because of how much damn fun he is to play. Due to not having any big or heavy weapons, Sho is incredibly fast, but is still able to be one hell of a hard hitter. That's on land and mid-air, because he's pretty handy up there as well. His persona is arguably the most useful in the game as well, focusing mainly on moon-themed attacks, which is actually a first in Persona, unless you count the Moonless Gown attack from Persona 3. But that's not his only attack, the rest are still very useful attacks. And it gets even better, because Minazuki's persona cannot be broken. Don't be fooled, he still needs SP to use some attacks, but even if his Mia is empty, he still has very good reversals. He may have overall meh health and low damage without his SP, or any other resources, but that's all that's wrong with him in my eye. Finally, there's his instant kill. My god, his instant kill.
Ain't too much to bear? You had hope, didn't you? But it was for naught.
Seriously, you think you could become a hero?
You should find yourself a safe house or a relative close by. Lay low for a while, because you're probably wanted for murder.
The expected result.
Yep, that's right. My absolute favourite character in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, and Persona 4 in general, is Naoto Shirogane, aka the Detective Prince, even though she's a woman. Well, that's explained in Persona 4, as she is originally believed to be a guy to go undercover. Doing this also managed to trick Kanji, but that's irrelevant. She is very mature in spite of her age after she lost both of her parents in a car accident when she was very young, but their death won't stop her from being an incredible detective. Because she is the second smallest fighter in the game, yeah that's right, even shorter than Rise, Naoto probably has the greatest speed in the entire game. This is along with her revolver assigned to her as a detective, makes her a very good fighter to zone on opponents. Her gun is good enough, but she is a fighter who has the great talent in occupying and taking control of a vast space over the arena with the help of her persona, Sakuna Hikona, which she was able to obtain after accepting her true emotions. That's something I've never understood about Persona 4. According to Persona 3, only like 1 in 1,000 people could use them. But according to Persona 4, you can master them so long as you can accept your true emotions. What is that? Anyway, I'll leave the questions till later. Sakuna Hikona is the Japanese dwarf deity of healing and sake brewing, and is associated with hot springs. As for what the persona can do, well first of all, it can be used for Naruto's most unique selling point, the Fate Gauge. This gauge basically gets planted onto the opponent and starts at the number 13. Once the gauge gets depleted down to 0, Naruto can use both Mudo and Hammer skills, making it an instant kill threat and a constant danger for instant kills. The persona itself can be used for some melee skills like Double Fang, which is an acceptable reward for spending some HP. And even if she fails that, Naruto can still annoy her foes by punishing them with status elements, particularly Fear and Silence. And hey, if you still want to go classic without the Fate Gauge, you can, as she still has plenty combos to go around. In case you haven't noticed by now, Naoto is a character which is best used for the trickster style players, as she has a decent pressure game which is used in conjunction with her traps, and as well as that, she can use an instant kill as well. In this instant kill, Naoto takes aim with a revolver looking through a scope, even though you can clearly see there is no scope on this gun, to make a perfect heart shot on them, and while she is looking through the scope, the other player still gets to control their character and try to escape. But as they say, you can run, but you can't hide, especially from the Japanese police. Now this does look pretty cool, but in the end, it's still just one shot that she fires, which she does a lot of in her fights anyways. This, along with her overall meh health bar and poor defenses, and the fact you have to reload every now and then on your revolver, which is kind of a letdown, but that does not break the character for me in any way, and that definitely makes Naoto my absolute favourite character in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. I'm the Sacred Swordsman, and all aboard the hype train for Persona 5. Good night!
All the place